It's Cambridge 105 Radio, and to help us round up the Cambridge Folk Festival for this year, I'm joined by James Page. James is responsible for marketing at Cambridge City Council Cultural Services. Hello, James.
Hello.
Thank you very much for joining us. So how's it been?
Thank you. Yeah, it's been wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, it's been a really special weekend. I think having those years off and then kind of coming back and yeah, it was quite emotional kind of seeing the gates open again and when it on Thursday and seeing people arrive again after the 2 years off. It's been wonderful.
I kind of don't want to ask the pandemic question, but clearly I'm going to ask it. What kind of effect did it have on the Folk Festival? Because I guess in both 2020 and 2021, you were all ready to go, and technically you could have put on a festival, other than the fact you weren't allowed to.
Yeah.
It was difficult to do so within the regulations at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely held challenges, and there was a lot of stop-starting. So from a department point of view, we're kind of almost holding by, waiting for the decisions. But we decided to hold it, and I think it was the right decision. And I think now it gave us time to think about the festival and kind of reassess, say a few things, and look to the future a lot, which was I think was really positive. But yeah, it was difficult, every summer kind of building up to this event, and the Folk Festival, as you know, has such a dedicated core audience. I think they probably missed it, a lot. So
and nothing, those 2 years, nothing to show for it, despite all the background prep that you and your colleagues would have done.
And that's exactly it. So you kind of build up, you put these lineups together, and you kind of from a marketing team, you start building the content. You have these deadlines, and then to all of a sudden have the rug pulled beneath you was difficult. But
and how much of this year's lineup for 2022 was like an amalgam of 2020 and 2021?
So very little actually got carried over in the end. I think we kind of decided, because initially it started with 2020, and then we were like, right, we'll move it over to 2021. Sorry. And then, with that change, we just thought, I think we'll just start afresh. There was very few names that carried over, but I think some of the names we did have for 2020, I'd like to think we will have in the future again. But I think it just felt like the right thing to kind of start afresh and replan it.
To have it about now rather than what might have been.
Exactly that. And I think that kind of helped everyone's mindset to kind of, wipe the ball clean and start. And I think that, I think it was important. I think that was.
Well, everything looks familiar. We came through as always, weaved our way. Fox, exactly the same place, and we know people have moaned if it had been moved a metre to the left or a metre, or I should say feet possibly, shouldn't I, in one direction or the other. But how many people have you had through the doors over the 4 days?
Yeah, so we're looking at around 15,000 people, which is fantastic. Sales have been really strong, and we're over the moon, actually. It's so lovely, and it's so heartwarming to see everyone coming back to Cambridge again with the same passion and dedication to the festival that they always have,
And do you know the geographic mix? That's to say, how many people who live pretty close to Cambridge come, and how many, and maybe where do the others
Absolutely.
come from?
So roughly around 20 to 30% of the audience is primarily just from Cambridge, and then there's a small percentage from London, and then it's kind of wider East Anglia. There's a lot of spill from there as well. I think, as a festival, we're always trying to look at kind of, Cambridge is its home. Cambridge is our family in that respect. So we're always looking at ways to kind of get locals back into the festival. And I think that's something we're going to continue working towards for next year as well. So
I'm always amazed at people who want to camp, especially when I discover that they're local people who are camping as well. It's like walking, cycling.
No, absolutely. I think that's great. And I think, a lot of the long-term folk festival kind of audience goers who live in the city come here for a bit of an escape. And I think with everything that's happening in the world and everything, it's lovely to have something like the Cambridge Folk Festival where you can just switch off and lose yourself in the music and the experience. So
now there have been a few grumbles, people moaning about toilets, I'm afraid, possibly an occupational hazard, and bike racks, which weren't where people were expecting them. Do you feel that you got the logistics exactly right?
I think every silver lining has a cloud, and I think there was an element of coming back to the festival again. We had some changes in terms of providers, and I think that did cause a few challenges. But I think in terms of the bike racks, sadly there were some trees that were planted, which meant we couldn't have the bike racks where they were. But we've been listening to a lot of customer feedback over the weekend, and I think it's given us a lot to think about for next year. So
something like the bike racks, you'll be having, I don't want to go too much off at a tangent, but you want to perhaps think, okay, we'll have the bike racks if we can. Obviously, they're not going to be on top of where the trees are, but you will have a look and maybe see if you can put some somewhere else, because clearly that's important, the local people
100%.
cycling in.
And I think, and again, taking those years off and hearing what the audience have to say, coming back again, it's really, really useful for us, and especially as a team, I think building off that, the audience is so imperative to this festival, so building off that feedback and doing what we can to build on that for next year.
I guess it must have been difficult as a team, because over 2 years, regardless of what happens, people are going to leave in an organisation, and there's going to be new folks coming in who they're going to be very good people. They're going to be very good people who haven't worked on the Cambridge Folk Festival before.
And that's exactly it. I think sadly during the pandemic, some of our providers sadly kind of went out of business, so we had to work with new providers who perhaps weren't as familiar with the site as they were before. So there's a little bit of a learning curve for the first couple of days. But again, the audience overall have been really supportive, and we've had wonderful feedback overall. As I mentioned, sadly, things didn't go as smooth as we'd hoped over the weekend. But I think overall, I'd like to think that everyone's had a great time.
Have you managed to see any of it yourself?
I managed to see little bits where I can. I've kind of been pinned to my desk, but I got to see a bit of This Is the Kit. I just saw a bit of Billy Bragg, which I was really hoping to see. I got to see Chico Trujillo, I think it was, on closing the stage one last night, and that was incredible. So yeah, I'm going to try and see some bits later where I can. It's kind of fleeting, kind of walking past on the way to another thing, but it's been amazing all the time.
Yeah, it's difficult. I realised I managed to schedule myself against the band I most wanted to see, Clannad, which wasn't caught the first 20 minutes, and I was very, very happy.
Good.
With that. I guess planning starts now for next year, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. We were discussing this earlier, actually. We'll give ourselves a week off and then start kind of discussions. But our programmer's already kind of looking at 2023 lineup already. I oversaw a spreadsheet over his shoulder the other day and saw that he was already piecing lineup names together.
Have you made the phone calls yet, or does that wait until later?
I think it's kind of like a wish list at the moment, and then it'll kind of progress from there. But yeah, it's going to be, we're already starting to think about it, and I think, a couple of days off and then we're off again for the next year. So,
Well, James, thank you very much for stopping by.
Oh, no, thank you.
I realise even on the last day, you've no doubt still got things to do.
Yeah, we do. But again, thank you to 105 really for joining us over the weekend. We really appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Happy to do so. Thanks very much.
Thank
you. James Page, responsible for marketing at Cambridge City Council Cultural Services.